And frankly, I believe we in media have apparently missed the significance of this story for our well-being as a country, as a society, and the impact it will have if we do not address this problem. And you don't start to address a problem until you recognize you have a problem. And it has to do with the results of the 2022 census. And the story of the census is not the problems we have had with the 2022 census, but the findings. And the findings are suggesting that as a nation, as a society, we are having declining birth rates and population growth to a point now that it is quite a major policy imperative. What the statistics are revealing is that if we do not cauterize and turn this around, then we will have an existential threat as a viable society in 20, 30 years. To cut to the chase, we're not reproducing at a rate that secures the viability of the country 20, 30 years from now. Our women and our men are not having enough children at a rate that is sustainable as a viable society. And there are several reasons for that we can discuss. But at the end of the day, we have to find a way to cauterize this. Yes, we have to find a way to cauterize this. And we in media have to play a part. Yes. The story was carried, but how it's reported, frankly, is distressing. The Observer chose to put it on page 9. More deaths, fewer births. Statin census reveals slowest population growth rate in over 50 years. Slowest population growth rate in more than 50 years. That's part of the chilling findings of the statistics from Statin. The Gleaner has a story on its front page, but look what they chose to take it from. Late delivery. Totally missing the essence of it. The fact that the census results are late is part of the story, but not the lead of the story. Thankfully, I noticed Nationwide led with it yesterday. Come on, man. We have to have a greater sense of what is important for us and guide. Yeah? Help to focus attention. So, the data, the findings, are essentially telling us that over the decade between 2011 and 2022, the population grew by less than 3%. And between 1970 and 2022, the population has averaged an annual growth rate of 0.24%, less than half of a percentage point. 0.24% it has grown between 1970 and 2022. That's 52 years. And it is pretty well known the population growth is below what is called a replacement rate of 2.1, meaning we should be growing at a rate of at least 2.1% for us to be regenerating, to keep up with what we need to be doing as people. We're going to have more on this, but let me bring you Siobhan Campbell's report first.
As of 2022, Statin estimates that Jamaica's total population stood at 2,774,538 persons. This was just over 76,000 more individuals than the data collected in 2011. It's a growth rate of 2.8%. According to Statin's Director of Census's Demographic and Social Statistics Division, Stacey Ann Robinson, this is the country's lowest birth rate and population growth in 53 years.
The average annual growth rate of 0.24% was the lowest over the period 1970 to 2022. The growth rate observed was influenced by a 42.2% decline in the births, moving from 747,788 to 432,018 over the intercensal periods 1970 to 1982 to 2011 to 2020, and it was further impacted by population losses due to deaths moving from 188,993 to 236,687.
For comparison, from 1970 to 1982, the population grew by over 341,000 individuals. It was 227,000 for the period 1991 to 2001. It fell to below 100,000 for the first time between 2001 and 2011. Absolute growth for that period was just over 91,000 individuals. Statin Director General Leisha Delati-Bader says at the current trend, Jamaica is on its way to population decline.
We're seeing where births are declining, and that has been the trend over several decades. We're also seeing where deaths are increasing, and particularly we're also seeing where net migration has declined. When you put all of those factors together, we end up with a population that is growing, albeit at a much slower rate. And over time, what we have been seeing over the several decades of censuses is that the population growth rate is slowing down. This is very important because it means that if we continue on this path, we will ultimately get to a declining population. And this is an important takeaway from the results of the population and housing census that we are presenting today.
In terms of parish, St. Catherine registered the highest population growth at 26,500. This was followed by Clarendon and Kingston and St. Andrew, which added 13,500 and 10,500 respectively over the decade. At the absolute lowest end is Hanover, with only 247 individuals added over the period. St. Thomas was not far behind at just 583. Siobhan Campbell for Nationwide News.
Thank you, Siobhan. And it's 14 minutes after 10 o'clock. George Davis joins me in the studio. When you see me in here, it means that something is happening. What is it, George?
Morning, Cliff. Morning, listeners. So, last evening I interrupted Siobhan and Sanjay to tell them about that policeman, that constable who took his own life in St. Elizabeth just after 5 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon. And I have similar news this morning. It is our understanding that a female student at the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies, I'm being told at the So George Elaine Hall took her own life this morning, and we understand that senior management, the police, first responders are all gathering at the location as we speak. So that's the information. You know, as I was trying to verify and put together before coming in here, I said to myself, I'm wondering if reporting has anything to do with the numbers we're hearing. And of course, it's a ridiculous thought because we have to report. But Cliff, it's troubling. But that is the
like
story.
there's a spate.
Yes, I hesitated to use the word spate yesterday, but I think I have nowhere else to go but to say spate now. So that's the latest report. Not sure of her age, but she was a resident at Georgia Lane Hall, and it's understood she took her life this morning, and the relevant personnel led by the university's management, police, first responders are at the scene.
Do we know what year?
No,
student?
I didn't get that or what her program of study was. But
Yeah.
just the gender confirmed and where it happened and what the response from the university initially has been or is being. The response
Yes.
is ongoing as we speak.
So, just to repeat, a female student
Yes.
at the Mona campus of the University of
Yes.
the West Indies. The name of the hall?
Georgia Lane
The Georgia Lane Hall.
is suspected to have taken her own life today.
Thank you, George.
All right.
I suppose we'll have more in the midday news, the world
Yes.
at noon. All right, let's go to the break and come back with more on the 2022. The average number per year of births, that is falling precipitously as well. Between 1982 and 1991, on average for those 10 years, we had more than 56,000 babies being born. That fell to 39,274 on average between 2011 and 2022. That's a fall of more than 30%. Yes. The findings also say average annual deaths increased by almost, rounded up to the nearest whole number, 45% for that period, from nearly 15,000 to more than 21,000. Yeah. And this is something we have to examine. And there are some well-known reasons. Yeah. There was a time when the birth rate was, or the fertility rate was too high. And then we did that most effective birth control, not birth control, it was a public education campaign. 2 is better than too many. Wasn't that the slogan? 2 is better than too many? Yeah? That was done in the late 1960s, at the beginning of the 1970s. Right? And that was so effective. And then, subsequent to that, we found that our women were choosing to delay having children by virtue of the fact that they were advancing career-wise, they were being better educated, and as a result, not the fertility rate, the birth rate. Fertility is another matter. The birth rate was declining. Yeah? Women were just simply saying, listen, I am going to take care of my education, advance my career. You can let us delay that. Yesterday we were discussing this in our daily production meeting, and a member of the team pointed out that they were in discussion with some pharmacists recently who said that what they now see as pharmacists, after some major entertainment lifestyle events, which normally create an environment for copulation. Let me put it that way. Like the big carnival, dream weekends, those things where people feel good, you drink and have a good time, you wine and dine. Yes, you wine and dine. And then after things happen, that they would see a surge in demand for Postinor. Yes. They will have to tell me more about these things, because I sat there and I'm out of that demographic group. But the surge in demand for Postinor, yes. So any slip up that took place, you dealt with it. I gather we had a lady, the Director General from Statin this morning. We're going to have some more from her on what these findings suggest. The other issue relating to this is the census of 2022 has had a fair amount of problems. And as I said, that's the angle the Gleaner chose to take it from this morning. Yeah. And I suppose there's possibly a level of lack of trust in the data. Yeah, but Statin, the Statistical Institute, is defending the methodology they use to ensure the accuracy of the 2022 census. Yes, here's Shalois Michael's report on that.
The Population and Housing Census, which is usually conducted every 10 years, was last published in 2011. The latest census began in September 2022. It was scheduled to be completed by December that year. But the process of collecting data from citizens in all 14 parishes has been marred by several challenges. Statin faced repeated issues in recruiting and retaining data collectors. It also had to contend with incomplete data sets and the inaccessibility of gated communities. A new release date of March 2023 was set, but the process was again delayed. Director General of Statin, Lisha Delati-Bader, addressed the issues of the delays at a media briefing on Wednesday. She says the COVID-19 pandemic and other operational challenges impacted the census, but she was quick to point out that those challenges also affected other countries in the region.
Now, while our experience with the 2022 census was unprecedented for us, it actually mirrored international trends. Globally, national statistics offices had to contend with the impact of the pandemic, but as well, we were contending with heightened privacy concerns and rapid digital transformation, which presented unprecedented obstacles to traditional enumeration. To quote the United Nations Economic and Social Council, the 2020 census round faced challenges primarily due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and to a lesser degree financial constraints, technical difficulties, and political and social insecurity.
The issues that plagued the data collection have left many questioning the veracity and usefulness of the exercise. But the Director General says the model-based approach used by Statin to ensure the accuracy of the census was in keeping with best practices and vetted by independent specialists, both locally and internationally.
At the end of the process, when we looked at the modeled estimates, we looked at the data that we collected from the short forms, from the sweep teams, from the rapid enumeration, we realized that we had population counts for 70% of the EDs in Jamaica, and that we only needed to use the modeled estimates for approximately 30% of those EDs. Now, what we did was that we took the information that we collected and validated it with information on the ground as well as other administrative records. And that is what Ms. Robinson will be presenting here today.
Statin says it has completed the data collection exercise and will be releasing the findings in phases. Shaloy Smichael for Nationwide News.
Thank you, Shaloy. Well, according to a communication specialist, Rajiv Danvers, it is all about fertility following security. Fertility following security. That's how he reacted to the report about the worrying decline in the rate at which the country's population has been growing.
I don't even say that we are against families. I just don't think that Jamaica is ready for us, because having a child shouldn't necessarily feel like an act of bravery. I think the society that is around us should really have that ability to show us that, hey, when we have a child, things will be better. So in other words, I think that fertility follows security, and that security be it social, financial, or emotional. I think that is the anchor that people want.
According to Mr. Danvers, there's a clear path to improving the numbers.
If fertility follows security, the nation don't have to beg for more children. We'll be having children after children after children. We'll have an overflow, because that is what a comfortable society gives us. A society that allows us to feel comfortable to be able to have children. And those are what I think that the policy shift should move from a conversation or a campaign for having more births to really fixing the conditions that make birth feel less like a burden. I think that's where we should really look at it.
He has a point. He has a very good point. Yes? People would be incentivized and encouraged to have more if they can take care of them and see their own well-being progressing, yeah, with more. It's almost time for the break. After the break, some good numbers